Eamon Red stood at the edge of the cliff, staring at the ruins of the dragon nesting grounds below. The sky was a dull gray, streaked with ash from long-dead volcanoes, and a cold wind whipped across the jagged rocks. He had seen dangerous worlds before, but nothing like this. DracoWar Prime was harsh, unforgiving, and almost silent, except for the faint crackle of distant storms and the whistle of wind through broken peaks. He checked the small scanner on his wrist. A faint pulse came through, an old beacon still sending its signal after who knew how many years. Hatchlings lost. Mother alive? The words repeated in his mind. Most explorers had left this place long ago. Everyone said the dragon eggs were gone forever, destroyed by storms, hunters, and the humans who had tried to control this world. But Eamon didn't believe lost forever meant impossible. He had spent years studying these creatures, learning their habits and following traces that others ignored. Packing his gear carefully, he hoisted a weathered satchel over his shoulder. Inside, a few ration packs, a medkit, ropes, climbing tools, and a small containment cradle for any living hatchlings he might find. His fingers brushed the edge of the cradle, and a small spark of hope stirred in his chest. He knew the odds were against him, but hope had always been stronger than fear in humans. He stepped forward, balancing on rocks slick from ash and frozen rain. The first climb was steep and treacherous. Loose stones shifted underfoot, and the wind threatened to throw him off balance. Every step required attention. One misstep could mean a fall that no human could survive. Eamon's heart pounded, but he didn't slow. He had learned long ago that hesitation could kill faster than the mountains themselves. Night fell quickly in the highlands. Shadows stretched across the jagged terrain, and the temperature dropped sharply. Eamon lit a small thermal lamp to scan the path ahead. The ruins of old nests were scattered across the cliffs, blackened and broken. Charred shells lay in heaps, and ash swirled in small clouds at his boots. The sight would have stopped anyone else. Many had given up on these mountains, convinced the dragons were gone. But Eamon felt something stir beneath his feet, a soft, irregular vibration. He dropped to his knees and pressed a gloved hand to the ground. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but it was there, a heartbeat. He could not believe it at first. His mind raced. Maybe it was a creature trapped below, maybe a rock slide, maybe nothing. But then the faint tapping came again, rhythmic and insistent. Eamon's pulse quickened. He brushed away debris carefully, revealing a small, wet hatchling. Its scales were dull, coated in ash and soot, and it shivered violently. Its eyes opened slowly, wide and fearful, meeting his with a look that made his stomach twist. Eamon whispered softly, "You're not alone. We'll find your mother." The hatchling let out a small, desperate chirp and curled closer to him. He wrapped it gently in a piece of cloth, careful not to hurt it. The night wind howled, and somewhere in the distance, a low rumble of falling rocks echoed. He knew this world didn't forgive mistakes. Every choice had to be perfect. He looked back at the path he had climbed and realized he had no clear route forward. The cliffs twisted into jagged spires, and the faint light of his lamp barely reached the next ledge. Every possible path seemed dead-end or deadly. He would have to navigate carefully, relying on his instincts, experience, and a little luck. One wrong move and both he and the hatchling would fall into the chasm below. Eamon paused for a moment, feeling the weight of responsibility. This hatchling represented more than survival, it was a symbol. Humans had brought destruction here before, careless and greedy. Now, perhaps, a single human could restore balance. The thought steadied him. He tightened his grip on the cradle and began moving again, scaling jagged rocks, testing each foothold before committing his weight. The hatchling whimpered once but fell silent after he murmured reassurance. Hours passed. The terrain grew steeper and darker. Eamon's muscles burned, and his lungs stung with cold air, but he refused to stop. Somewhere above, hidden in the rocks, a pair of glowing eyes watched him. He didn't know what creature it was, but instinct screamed caution. He adjusted his path, keeping low, moving with care. Every sound, every shadow was a potential threat. Yet, every step brought him closer to a possibility that no one else dared to hope for, the mother dragon. As dawn began to creep over the horizon, the wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of something alive. It was sharp, metallic, and strangely sweet. Eamon froze. His heart skipped a beat. This was no ordinary predator, this was something far larger, something that could crush him in an instant. But he also knew that fear alone would not save the hatchling. Courage would. Intelligence would. Human determination would. He adjusted the cradle, securing the hatchling, and scanned the jagged cliffs ahead. Somewhere in those mountains the mother waited, alive against all odds. Eamon swallowed the cold lump of fear in his throat and whispered, "We'll find you." And with that he stepped forward into the unknown, as the first rays of sun cut through the broken sky, revealing the dangers and the hope that lay ahead. Eamon moved carefully along the narrow ledge, the hatchling safe in his arms. The wind had grown stronger, gusts slamming against him and threatening to knock him off balance. Each step was deliberate, a test of muscle, focus and nerve. Below him the cliffs dropped into a yawning abyss, black and silent. One slip, one miscalculation and it would all be over. He had seen explorers fall to their deaths here. He was determined not to be one of them. The hatchling stirred, letting out a faint, frightened cry. Eamon whispered softly, "I've got you. Just a little further." The voice seemed to calm the tiny creature, and he felt a spark of courage inside himself. It wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about hope, about proving that humans could protect, not just destroy this world. The path became narrower, winding through jagged rocks and twisted roots that had grown over centuries. He stopped suddenly, noticing a faint shimmer across the rocks ahead. At first he thought it was sunlight reflecting off mineral veins, but as he approached, he realized it was movement. Small, shadowy creatures, scavengers adapted to the highlands, were prowling, drawn by the warmth of life. They had sharp claws and quick reflexes and they weren't afraid to attack. Eamon knew he had to act fast. He scanned his surroundings, spotting a narrow crevice to his right. With careful precision, he shifted the hatchling into a more secure grip and inched toward the crevice. The scavengers hissed and snapped their claws, but he moved silently, every step calculated. Finally he ducked inside the narrow space. The hatchling pressed close against his chest, trembling. He exhaled slowly, trying to calm both himself and the creature. "We're okay, for now," he muttered. The crevice led deeper into the rock, winding downward into a hidden cave system. Eamon knew that caves in these mountains often hid dangers as deadly as the open cliffs. Unstable floors, hidden pits and predators lying in wait. Yet it was also the most likely path toward the mother dragon. The signs had been here before, the claw marks, the faint scorch marks on the walls, the smell of something living. Hours passed as he navigated the winding tunnels. The hatchling dozed lightly in his arms and Eamon's mind raced. Every rock, every sound, every flicker of light could be a threat. He moved silently, using his hands to test each step before committing his weight. At one point, a sudden rumble beneath him made his heart leap. The ground shifted slightly, a reminder that the mountains themselves were alive and dangerous. Eamon pressed onward, his focus unwavering. He knew the mother dragon would not reveal herself lightly. Any misstep, any sign of aggression could end everything. He relied on observation, patience, and the small knowledge he had gained from years of studying dragons. He remembered the old texts and reports. The dragons were intelligent, cautious, and territorial. Approaching them required more than strength, it required understanding, empathy, and courage. As he climbed deeper into the cave system, he noticed faint glowing fungi along the walls, large and boulder-like. The pattern was familiar. It was used by dragons to heat their nesting grounds, a natural incubator. This had to mean something. He was close. Eamon's pulse quickened. He could feel the hatchling stir, sensing the nearness of its mother. The bond between them was unmistakable, pulling him forward with urgency. Suddenly the ground shifted beneath his feet again. Dust fell from the ceiling and a sharp rock dislodged, tumbling past him. Eamon grabbed the hatchling tightly and pressed himself against the cave wall, heart hammering. He knew the mountain was unstable, but stopping now was not an option. Each second brought them closer to their goal, or to disaster. Ahead, a faint warmth began to fill the air, accompanied by a deep, low vibration that seemed almost like a heartbeat. Eamon froze. This was no ordinary heat, it was living, immense, and powerful. The hatchling chirped and pressed closer to him, recognizing something familiar. Eamon swallowed hard, feeling both awe and fear. If the mother dragon was here, she could crush him with a single swipe or fling him into the abyss. But she could also be the key to saving the hatchlings, the proof that humans could rise to protect life against impossible odds. He adjusted the cradle, tightening the straps and holding the hatchling securely. Every instinct told him to be cautious, yet he knew that hesitation could cost them both. Step by step he moved toward the source of the warmth and vibration. His mind worked furiously, calculating the safest approach, noting every sound, every shadow, every detail. Then he saw it, a massive shadow moving in the darkness ahead. The glow of the fungi reflected off scales that shimmered like molten metal. The air vibrated with low growls, deep and commanding. Eamon's heart pounded, but he forced himself to breathe slowly. He was about to meet a creature thought extinct, a creature whose survival depended on him and whose trust would have to be earned. He whispered softly to the hatchling, "Stay close. We're almost there." The tiny creature chirped in response as if understanding. Eamon felt a surge of determination. Humans had survived against impossible odds before. Now he would have to show courage, intelligence, and heart against a challenge larger than himself. The shadow moved closer, and Eamon realized this was the moment that would define everything. One wrong move and all would be lost. One correct choice and he could reunite the last living dragon hatchling with its mother, proving that even in a world scarred by humans, one human could make a difference. The cave ahead stretched wide and dark, the heat intensifying. Eamon stepped forward, gripping the hatchling tightly, and the shadows shifted as something enormous stirred just beyond the light. He took a deep breath and prepared to face whatever waited. Eamon's breath caught as he stepped into the cavern. Heat rolled over him like a living thing, thick and heavy, making every movement a test of courage. The hatchling squirmed lightly in his arms, sensing the presence of something immense. In the dim glow of the fungi along the walls, he could see it, scales glinting like molten sapphire, wings folded like sails, claws the size of a human hand. The mother dragon was alive. Her eyes, golden and piercing, fixed on him instantly. They were sharp, calculating, and wary. One wrong move could trigger her fury. Eamon froze, measuring his actions. He had studied dragons from texts, holograms, and observations, but nothing prepared him for the raw intelligence in those eyes. She was not a monster, she was a guardian, a creature shaped by centuries of survival, capable of crushing him with a single motion. The hatchling chirped softly, wriggling in his arms, and Eamon held it closer, offering comfort. The mother's eyes flickered, focused on her young, then back on him. Eamon realized she was assessing him. He had no weapons that could harm her, and even if he tried he would fail. What he could offer was understanding, patience, and a demonstration that he was not a threat. He crouched low, keeping the hatchling cradled, and made the first move. Softly, carefully, he extended one hand in a slow, open gesture. No sudden movements, no fear in his stance. "I mean no harm," he said in a low voice, steady despite the pounding of his heart. "I'm here to help. I want to return your hatchling to you." The dragon's nostrils flared. Smoke hissed from her mouth. The cavern trembled slightly as she shifted her massive weight. Eamon didn't flinch. He could feel the vibrations through the ground, reminders of her power. Yet he held the hatchling close, whispering, "You are safe. We only want to help." Minutes passed like hours. The dragon studied him, her golden eyes narrowing, testing his intentions. Then she let out a low rumble, a sound that vibrated through Eamon's chest. The hatchling chirped in response. Eamon took it as a sign, the first acknowledgement of trust. Slowly he edged forward, keeping the hatchling visible to her. The dragon's massive head tilted, curious but still tense. The cavern itself was unstable. Rocks hung overhead, threatening to collapse at any moment, and the floor beneath them was uneven. Eamon knew that a wrong step or sudden move could trigger a landslide. Yet he had no choice but to continue. If he faltered, both the hatchling and he could be crushed, and the mother could be forced to defend herself aggressively. He remembered the old guides and observational notes. Dragons recognized consistency, patience, and respect. Eamon spoke softly, describing what he had seen in the ruins below, the broken nests, the hatchling surviving against all odds. He explained that humans often caused destruction, but he was different. He was there to restore, not to harm. The mother dragon's eyes softened slightly as she listened, or at least she seemed to consider his words. Her tail swept the cavern floor, scraping rock and ash, and the hatchling chirped again, nuzzling against her. The connection between mother and child was unmistakable, powerful, and unbreakable. Eamon realized that this bond would guide the next steps. If he could respect it, the dragons might allow him to lead them to safety. He lowered himself carefully, presenting the hatchling toward the mother. The dragon sniffed the small creature, her breath hot and smoky, curling around Eamon's arm. She made a low, almost rumbling growl, and Eamon held his ground. Slowly the hatchling moved toward her, guided by instinct, and the mother nudged it with her massive snout. It was a cautious reunion, but it was real. Eamon felt a surge of relief and awe. He had faced impossible odds, entered a domain far beyond human size and strength, and now the mother dragon acknowledged him as an ally, or at least as harmless. Yet there was no time to linger. The cavern groaned, the mountain shifting slightly, warning of the instability around them. Rocks hung precariously, and one sudden tremor could block their escape forever. He scanned the cavern looking for the safest path out. A narrow tunnel led upward, a potential escape route. But it would require guiding both dragons through tight spaces, over jagged rocks and past unstable ledges. Eamon's mind raced. This was more than courage now, it was strategy, timing, and trust. He had to lead, predict, and adapt, or they would all perish. He whispered to the mother, keeping his voice calm and steady. "Follow me. There's a way out. You and your hatchling can survive this." The dragon hesitated, testing his intentions one last time, then shifted slightly, moving with deliberate caution. Eamon followed, guiding the hatchling safely in front of him, ready to intervene if necessary. Every step was tense. The mountain seemed to resist them, sending falling debris, loose stones, and tremors. Yet for the first time, Eamon felt a strange synergy. Human determination, intelligence, and careful observation had earned him the trust of one of the most powerful creatures in the galaxy. At the tunnel's entrance, the sunlight of dawn barely touched the floor. Eamon paused, feeling the weight of what had been accomplished, but also the peril ahead. The escape would test everything: human courage, intellect, and the fragile trust of a dragon mother protecting her young. He drew a deep breath, gripping the hatchling tightly, and whispered, "We can do this. Together." The mother rumbled softly, and Eamon knew the real challenge was only beginning. The path forward would demand heroism beyond anything he had faced before. Eamon felt the heat from the mother dragon behind him as he stepped into the narrow tunnel. The air was thick, almost suffocating, carrying the scent of molten stone and smoke. The hatchling chirped softly in his arms, pressed close against him, and Eamon whispered, "We'll make it. Stay close." Every word was steady, calm, but inside his chest, adrenaline raced. One misstep now could crush all hope. The tunnel twisted sharply, the walls jagged and uneven. Rocks hung overhead like broken teeth, loose and ready to fall. Eamon tested each foothold before committing his weight. His heart thumped with every echo of stone scraping against stone. Behind him, the mother dragon's wings brushed the walls, dislodging small stones that tumbled to the ground. One rock hit the hatchling's cradle and Eamon flinched, gripping it tighter. The little dragon whimpered, but he murmured reassurance, "We're okay. Keep moving." Ahead, a chasm opened, cutting the path in two. The gap was wide, too wide for him to jump alone, let alone a massive dragon. Eamon scanned the walls for handholds, cracks, or ledges. He spotted a narrow rock shelf along the side, jagged but stable enough to support the mother's weight. He exhaled slowly, forming a plan. The challenge was clear. He had to lead both dragons across this treacherous gap while keeping the hatchling safe. The tunnel behind could collapse at any moment. The mountain's tremors were growing stronger. There was no room for error. Courage alone would not suffice. He needed intelligence, quick thinking, and the instinct to act decisively. Eamon secured the hatchling in a reinforced cradle and slung it over his shoulder, allowing one arm to remain free. He tested the shelf with a small rock first. It held. He stepped onto it, careful to keep his weight centered. Behind him, the mother dragon rumbled low as if sensing the danger. Eamon whispered, "Follow the ledge. You can do it." Her wings flexed cautiously, and she took the first slow step, her claws gripping the narrow path. A tremor shook the cavern, loosening a chunk of rock from above. It fell, striking the edge of the ledge and sending dust and debris into the air. Eamon froze for a heartbeat, calculating the risk. The mother dragon shifted instinctively, bracing herself, and the hatchling let out a small cry. He couldn't stop now. With a quick, precise move, he grabbed a nearby rope, tying it to a stable rock pillar above, creating a temporary anchor. It wasn't perfect, but it could save them if the shelf gave way. The mother dragon hesitated, eyeing the path. Eamon stayed calm, speaking softly to her. "Step by step. Trust me." Slowly she moved forward, claws scraping the stone. Each movement was tense. Dust fell around them, echoing like distant thunder. Eamon followed, testing the ledge with every step. His muscles ached, his lungs burned, but he didn't stop. Survival demanded focus beyond pain. Halfway across the chasm, a loose rock dislodged under the mother's weight. She let out a sharp hiss, clawing at the shelf to regain balance. Eamon leapt forward, bracing against the wall, his body acting as a stabilizer. "Almost there," he shouted over the echoing cavern. The hatchling chirped, sensing the urgency. Eamon felt a surge of determination. He could not fail. Not now. Not after everything. The final stretch was the steepest. The shelf ended abruptly, leaving only a jagged slope leading to a safer ledge. Eamon guided the hatchling to the edge, letting it cling to him as he tested the slope. The mother followed, wings outstretched slightly to balance, her tail brushing the walls. A sudden rumble shook the cavern and a rock slide began behind them. Dust and debris cascaded toward the gap, threatening to trap them forever. Eamon acted instinctively. He grabbed a loose boulder and hurled it toward the edge of the shelf, creating a controlled distraction. The falling rock triggered a minor collapse, clearing some debris but not enough to threaten them. The mother dragon paused, watching him, then pushed forward with renewed trust. Step by step they reached the safer ledge. The hatchling chirped loudly, the first sign of relief in hours. But there was no time to celebrate. The tunnel behind them groaned, threatening to collapse entirely. Eamon scanned the cavern ceiling and walls. One wrong movement now could bury them in stone forever. Using the rope he had anchored earlier, he guided the mother dragon across the final stretch, timing her steps with precision. Her massive claws clanged against the rock and dust poured down, but she moved with careful deliberation. Finally they reached a wider plateau. The cavern's tremor seemed to ease slightly, the mountain holding long enough for them to pause. Eamon lowered the hatchling to the ground, checking for injuries. The tiny dragon looked up, eyes bright and trusting, then chirped toward its mother. The mother responded with a low, resonant rumble, nuzzling the hatchling. Eamon stepped back, breathing heavily, feeling the weight of what they had survived. He had faced impossible odds: unstable cliffs, collapsing tunnels, massive predators, and the constant threat of the mountain itself. Yet he had led them through not with brute force but with courage, intelligence, and determination. Humans could face impossible danger and succeed where others might fail. As he watched the dragon pair settle on the plateau, a sense of awe filled him. These creatures, thought lost forever, were alive because of human courage and careful action. But Eamon knew the journey wasn't over. Beyond the plateau lay open highlands, still scarred by storms and human incursions, still dangerous. Their survival depended on him continuing to guide them. He straightened, looking toward the faint light filtering through a distant tunnel exit. "Come on," he whispered to the dragons. "We're not safe yet, but we're alive. And that's the start." The mother dragon rumbled softly, shifting to follow, wings flexing lightly. The hatchling clung to her side, chirping again. Eamon smiled despite the exhaustion and fear. Humans had faced impossible odds before, and here on DracoWar Prime, his courage had made a difference, not just surviving but protecting life and restoring hope. The light at the end of the tunnel grew brighter. Outside, the world waited, still harsh, still dangerous, but now with the possibility of something more. And for the first time in centuries, the dragons had a chance to live freely again. The sunlight outside the tunnel was harsh and bright after the dim, suffocating glow of the cavern. Eamon blinked, adjusting to the glare, but he didn't stop moving. The mother dragon and her hatchling followed closely behind, stepping cautiously over jagged rocks, eyes alert to every sound. The mountains of DracoWar Prime were still unforgiving, but now for the first time, there was a path forward. Eamon paused on a small plateau to rest, letting the dragons settle briefly. The hatchling chirped softly, rubbing against its mother's massive leg, and Eamon felt a rare warmth in his chest. He had come to these mountains seeking survival, curiosity, maybe even fame, but what he found was far more important. Proof that humans could rise above destruction and protect life that others had given up for lost. The mother dragon rumbled low, a sound that vibrated through the ground, and Eamon froze for a moment, thinking she might attack. But instead she nudged the hatchling toward him. He understood immediately, she was testing him, acknowledging him, maybe even showing respect. The little dragon pressed against his boots, chirping as if saying thanks. It was a moment that made every scrape, every fall, and every terrifying step worth it. Beyond the plateau, the highlands stretched endlessly. Jagged cliffs, storm-battered rocks, and ash-scarred plains gave way to areas that had survived centuries of human neglect. If he could lead the dragons there, they might thrive again. Eamon knew it would be dangerous. Alien scavengers still roamed, unpredictable storms struck without warning, and the mountains themselves were unstable, but he also knew that humans had faced impossible odds before. And humans could succeed with courage, intelligence, and determination. He turned back briefly to scan the cavern exit. The path behind them was collapsed and treacherous, a reminder that this success had been fragile, temporary, dependent on every choice he had made. But looking at the dragons, he felt an unwavering determination. They survived. And now maybe they could live freely. Carefully, he guided them down a narrow slope, keeping the hatchling close and signaling to the mother where the safest footing was. The dragon moved with surprising agility considering her size. Her wings brushed lightly against rock walls, and her tail swayed for balance. Each step demanded focus and patience. The hatchling chirped with excitement and trust, and Eamon felt a surge of hope. This was more than survival, it was restoration. Hours passed as they navigated the terrain. Eamon kept moving, never letting the dragons linger in dangerous areas. Storm clouds began to gather in the distance, dark and heavy. He knew the highlands were unpredictable, a sudden storm could sweep them away. He adjusted his pace, leading them toward a sheltered valley he had spotted on an old map, one that might provide a safe haven. Finally they reached the valley. Trees, oddly resilient to DracoWar's harsh climate, grew here and a small river ran through it. The mother dragon sniffed the air, nostrils flaring, and the hatchling chirped excitedly. Eamon breathed a sigh of relief. They were safe at least for now. The dragons had a chance to thrive in a protected environment, and he had proven that human courage could alter the fate of an entire species. He sat on a rock, exhausted but exhilarated. The hatchling nuzzled his shoulder briefly, chirping softly. The mother dragon lowered her massive head to him, eyes meeting his in a silent acknowledgement. For a moment, it felt as though the mountain, the dragons, and the world itself recognized human determination and moral courage. Humans were capable of more than destruction. They could protect, restore, and inspire. News of the rescue traveled faster than he imagined. Scientists, explorers, and settlers from distant outposts heard of the human who had saved the last living dragons. Some were skeptical at first. How could one human possibly face the dangers of DracoWar Prime and survive? But the evidence was undeniable. The mother dragon and her hatchling thrived under Eamon's guidance, proof that humans could act decisively, intelligently, and morally even when the odds seemed insurmountable. Eamon realized something else as he watched the dragons. This was bigger than him. He had acted out of compassion and curiosity, but what he had done would inspire others. The story of survival, courage, and determination would spread, teaching humans to respect life, to face impossible odds, and to trust in their own ingenuity. Perhaps this was the legacy humanity needed, proof that even a single person guided by conscience and intelligence could change the course of history. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the valley, Eamon stood. The mother dragon spread her wings slightly, testing the air currents, while the hatchling chirped excitedly. He knew they would leave the valley soon, exploring the highlands, surviving as dragons were meant to. And he knew humans would continue to watch, learn, and protect. Eamon took a deep breath, feeling the exhaustion and the thrill of achievement. He had faced mountains, storms, predators, and fear itself, and he had won. Not through force alone but through courage, intelligence, and moral strength. This was the essence of humanity, to rise when the odds were impossible, to fight for life, and to protect what mattered most, even when no one else believed it could be saved. The dragons looked at him one last time before moving forward, leaving tracks in the valley that would mark their return to the wild. Eamon smiled. He had been part of something extraordinary, a story of life saved against impossible odds, and he knew that the memory of this day would endure, not just for humans but for the dragons themselves. He turned back toward the mountains, ready to return to the world of explorers and settlements, knowing he had proven something fundamental. Human courage could shine even in the darkest, most dangerous places. One human had made a difference. One human had changed the fate of a species. And perhaps, one human could inspire countless others to do the same. The wind carried the faint roar of the mother dragon as she and her hatchling disappeared into the highlands. Eamon watched until the shapes were gone, chest still heavy with awe and pride. The sky was broken, yes, but in that brokenness, hope had taken flight, and humanity had shown its finest face.